So official.
Hi,
Hi, everyone.
we're here in Costa Rica. It's our first live video from Costa Rica, which I feel like is a conversation in itself because we had a plan um, to record a video every day we were here, which I think we probably said, and then we got here and it's just been so relaxing, and it's felt like not resonant to do anything that doesn't feel resonant, I guess. That's a cheesy thing to say, but like it's like we've been wanting to share and communicate with this community, and I've been really excited about that. All these ideas have come up, like amazing things that have come up while we've been here. And then every time we wanted to record a video, it's felt like, oh, it'd be too rushed, or like it's late at night and we're like totally beat from travel, or so but it feels, today we were really excited about connecting, and there's so many amazing experiences that we've had so far that we've wanted to share here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gosh,
one of
it's so
which,
interesting. Before we left California just 4 or 5 days ago, I can't remember how long it's been, but we were having all these creative kind of visions of all sorts of things coming through. And since we've been here, it's all just sort of powered down. And I really think it's largely because, at least for me, it feels like my system is acclimating to a very different atmosphere. And the energy in the West and in big cities like where we were in San Diego, which is a very urban place, is there's a freneticness to it. There's a feverishness to it. It's really intense, and it has an influence. And I can feel myself since we've gotten here just sort of powering down, just really,
yeah,
really resting. And
yeah. A friend of ours related this as she's in Hawaii as like that's a being place versus many of the places in mainland U.S., at least that I've lived, are more doing places, and I'm a product of doing places.
yeah,
And feels more like a being place.
very much so. I mean, we're in a super small, very remote area of Costa Rica. We plan to be here through November. This is now we're moving into the rainy season, and so it's there's not a lot of tourists here. There's not a lot of activity because there's potential for rain pretty much every day. Although we've only had one big rainy day so far. But it's cloudy right now. It could rain at any second. It's that kind of thing. So it feels just super chill, like very, very relaxed. And like right outside of our window, we have a waterfall. Let me see if I can show you that. There it is.
Do you see it?
Yeah, you see the
Yeah, there it
waterfall?
is. There it is.
So we have a waterfall back there, and there's a river on the other side. We have a little yard around the house. There's a lot of wildlife, birds, and local animals coming through, and we have our dog with us. And it just sort of feels very much like a time to rest. And it's not only kind of resting from the trip, like the getting here was a whole thing, although it happened really smoothly, like all the logistics came together nicely, and it was amazing. It's still taxing and tiring to the body to travel like that. So we're very much in a place of just resting and relaxing, and then sort of seeing kind of what wants to be generated from there in terms of projects. We have a few kind of projects sitting there lurking that are just ready for us to activate at any moment. And I think some of this time is meant to be here to see if any of those projects from this more being place still excite us, still invigorate us, still interest us. What are you saying?
Yeah, no, I think it's a big part of the reason that we wanted to come. We've talked a lot in the podcast and on the site and the community about this idea of repatterning, and how we all have patterns that kind of are on the inside, thinking patterns, things we've learned. One of them is this doing idea, like I must do to be a worthy person, enough of a person, enough, period. And that's something we both share from our backgrounds as people. And I think that like even in our van trip last year, we took off to kind of repattern from our very routine-like doing patterns at home in Encinitas, and then we found that we ended up doing a lot, and moving on the van trip. And so a lot of what we wanted to do, we started to see that that like our lifestyle was not oriented toward the natural flow of creation necessarily, even though we're feeling a lot of that in the times that we sit and the times we're still, when we connect with others who are of a like heart and of, you know, a like perspective on their role here on the planet and as who they are here. We feel a lot of those creative impulses. We also saw that some of that has come from places of doing or expectations of exchange of worthiness, because a lot of, we're so taught that like we must do to be enough. And so we really wanted to stop and be quiet and stop changing our location, because we were spending so much time and energy doing that I think we started to look at what our calling was and our service, the service that we wanted to give. And we saw that all the constant moving, while it was perfect at the time for what it was and exactly what we needed then, started to detract from what we wanted to offer. And so we wanted to get in a place where we could be still, have our kind of just be at home and be in a much more natural environment as well. One of the things I think that I've always, so many people love travel, and one of the gifts that travel has given me, and one of the reasons I think that it's so inspiring and people feel inspired by it, is that you can just see that there are people in the world living an entirely different way than you have always thought is the right way to live, or possibly if we are raised in one culture or raised in one way to be, and we often believe that's the way to live. And travel, being here, we expected, I love that we expected we would want to arrive and release a video every day, and then we get here, and of course, like, it's working on us, so we feel relaxed, and we feel just being here is what we want to be doing right now. And so I love that unexpected, we're just excited to be here. We've been drawn here in so many strong ways that just continue here, the resonance, the coincidences. And so we couldn't have expected, being in this environment, which is exactly what we wanted, has kind of relaxed us into not necessarily feeling like we need to do right away. And so it's perfect.
Yeah, my first, and Anne, we love you too. Thanks for being with us.
So good to see you.
One experience I've been kind of having here and there, particularly in the mornings, is just this kind of interesting boredom. And I say interesting because I'm kind of watching it. I'm not kind of like consumed by it and feeling bored, but it's like it's an appearance of boredom. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it shows me that kind of my field, my system, if you will, is very accustomed to distraction and stimulation and excitement and shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing. And so what's happened here as a result, and again, I'm just sort of watching this boredom, like, oh, this is interesting. And I've been met, like, the natural environment here has just continuously given me something so much more interesting and enriching. Like today and yesterday, for example, I just had the idea to go down to the river, and I just jumped in the water and swam. And it's not really swimming, you more just submerge yourself, and like, it's so cold and the water is so electrifying that I can stay under for about a second, and I lurch out of the water and literally scream because it's so invigorating. Or this morning, a grasshopper appeared where we were eating breakfast, and Sophia was completely mesmerized by this grasshopper. So we had this whole hour with this grasshopper, just being with the grasshopper. It was crawling all over Sophia. It was fascinating to see that it didn't bother her a bit. Whereas bugs have always kind of, they kind of freak people out a little bit. Like, it was just no big deal to have a grasshopper crawling all over her body and up in her hair. It just didn't bother her at all. She thought it was really great. She was really kind of fell in love with this little grasshopper, and we fed the grasshopper. So it's just seeing that, like, I have, because of living the way that we have, I've become very used to like activity and stimulation and structure and all these patterns that Teresa's talking about. And so one thing that we've intuitively known for a while is like, let's get to zero. Let's wipe away all the patterns. Let's get into a very, very natural environment, such as the one we're in, and just see kind of what, from a deeper, more natural, organic place within, wants to be expressed, wants to create itself, wants to move through us. And that's kind of the question that I think we're exploring here is to sort of see, like, okay, if we leave all that stuff behind, all the activity that's really there to mask lack beliefs around worthiness or connection or community or any of these things, if we just discard all of that and find our way back to a very, very pure place of being and at rest, and then from there see kind of what wants to create itself. From that is our active question being in this place, I think. And it's easy here. It's gorgeous. I mean, if you've heard us talk about this, where we visited here in the wintertime, if you've heard us talk about this, you'll know that to us, this place feels very ascendant. The people who have come here and who have settled here, not only the Tico population, which is the Costa Rican population, but also those expats, largely from the US, who have relocated here, have really come here seeking to create something really, really special. And one thing you notice by the coast here, and this is common in other very, very heavily vacationed areas, is you find people, they're kind of on the run from something, like they're just trying to get away from their old life. And we get it, understand, that makes perfect sense. But here what you find are people who are really going to something. They're going to a very deep, natural, harmonious relationship with the planet, with the world around us. They're really looking to connect and be in this place in a very specific way, which is, when I say specific, I mean like very harmonious, very connected. I mean, I wish we could take you, maybe we will take you on a tour of some of these places. Like the people who own this house, we'll take you on a tour of this house maybe in a moment, but they have property just over the hill here, and their grounds are like a sculpture garden. It's like a museum. It's extraordinary. And they just make art all day. They make art out of whatever they find. Nikki makes art out of like found leather jackets. She turns them into these awesome belts. Brad makes sculpture out of steel. And there's all these amazing sculpture pieces throughout the garden. They've kind of sculpted the water so that it pours through the entire grounds into all these little gathering pools. You can sit in them. You can meditate by them. There's one that's really designed for kids. There's a big one where you can just jump in and swim. It flows underneath the house. The house was created on the foundation of another house that they bought and disassembled in Bali, and they shipped it here. So it's just people like that who are just so interested in making things and creating that that find their way here. And we went to a party last night. It was 30 or 40 people like that. Sophia's crying upstairs, so Teresa's going to check on her. But 30 or 40 people who are all here for that reason. And oh my God, it's such a richness and depth to the community here, and things that we really, really are, that resonate really big time for us. So anyway, this is kind of what we're finding here. People are coming here, moving to a more natural, holistic relationship with the earth, with the nature around us, with the wildlife here. The last thing I'll say on this is that it feels to us like a new society is in process here. It's being developed. Like we've had this notion that we want to kind of create community and help populate a new earth, this theme that maybe you've heard about. It's already happening here. It's actually like it's developed. People are really doing it quite naturally, very elegantly, and not with any sort of voice box, not like they're shouting about it or trying to preach or promote anything. They're just doing it, and when you enter into this field, there's a drive into this community. You feel something. It's like your senses just turn on. Something awakens. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah, I like this idea that it's just it's creation. It feels like creation, like every bit of it, because you go around and it's like extremely lush, fertile, both in terms of like the land, but also the people. Like they just feel really alive. That's the first thing we noticed when we got here, was the eyes of the people who live here.
And their skin.
There's like a clarity,
Whoa.
There's a radiance, and everybody's doing something. Either they've recreated themselves, they've recreated who they are in the world, what they're giving to the community. There's like a woman who is like a master chocolatier, and there's like, I can't even say, there's all these like very specific gifts that people are giving, and this creative radiance that's coming from them, and it is very natural. Whereas I think, and I love the idea of like the boredom, because I think about like, you know, we lived in New York City for a long time, and I think we both came to, you know, there's this very like huge element. There's a lot of creativity there too, but there's also a lot of consumption. And I know that I have like a very consuming, cultured like consumption about that, you know, to use Anurag Gupta's words, like create the creation and consumption dichotomy, because like when we first got here, like, oh my God, there's 2 restaurants, will we be okay? You know, because we're so used to this, like just outsourcing our well-being in so many ways, like things that we think we need to be okay. And that's just like one very small but kind of silly example of like how we tend to grasp at shiny things to make ourselves feel okay. And here there's just this like very natural, it's very different from anywhere we've lived, and there's this very natural sense of creativity. And this one woman we spoke with who, you know, has now spent half her life here but spent the other half in Washington, D.C., said something like, oh, I could never imagine being in a desk job. Like, she's never been, you know, but here she's like recreated herself 5 different times. She was like a massage therapist, and she owned a B&B, and now she's the chocolatier. You know, there's just so many, there's just a very fresh perspective, an open perspective on who you can be, and the kind of life that people want to live and that they're creating here. And there's a real devotion to that. You feel the devotion in these, you know, these homes and these farms, like right next to Brad and Nikki own this house. Stephen was talking about their magical house. Like right next to that is this incredible retreat center built right into the side of the river. And, you know, people are really building a new way of living here. And that's why we wanted to explore being here and to be here.
Yeah, Risha just posted a good a comment. Sounds like an organic sense of contribution. It really is. Like there's one guy, this older fellow from, I think he's from Kentucky, actually. His name is Thomas. He's the guy who makes the coffee, and everybody gets their coffee from him, and it's like so good. There's
and he does so many other
town.
things too.
Yeah,
as
he
we
does.
discovered yesterday.
He made cheesecake last night for this
He's
party.
a baker
We don't
also.
usually eat vegan, or we usually don't eat a lot of like dairy products, but this was like just so good.
It was like a work of love. Yeah.
And the chocolate, when Teresa says world class, I mean, it is like, it's really extraordinary chocolate. There's a cheese maker, there's a bread maker, there's a restaurant where everybody goes on Saturday night and there's live music. I mean, the first time we came here, I sort of felt like we kind of slipped through this portal in time. And I felt like at any point, like either Kanye West or the Glenn Miller Orchestra could be played on the jukebox, if you will, and it would be so relevant. It's just a timeless place. There's a sense of beingness here, of community, of togetherness, of contribution. All these things are really real. And for us, like we were led here. And I think one thing that, you know, 2 kind of principles that we've really kind of come to trust through this process of finding this place, because this may not be the place for everybody. I mean, everybody sort of, I think, is on their path, is on their journey, looking for whatever they're looking for, but we really trusted our intuition, and then very clear signs, coincidences, synchronicities began to point us up here quite specifically, as if this is where you're supposed to go. And when we got here, everything was super easy, and all these other synchronicities began to kind of just pop up over and over and over. And even last night, we went to this party, and it
was a birthday party for someone we didn't know.
It was a birthday party for this guy that we didn't know, apparently. And I wished him happy birthday, and he came and he sat down next to me. We started talking, and I said, yeah, I lived in New York for 20 years. He said, oh, yeah, I lived in New York for a bunch of years, too. I did real estate, did all kinds of things. And then he started talking about his interest in music. And I said, oh, what kind of music are you into? And he said, I'm into Turkish music, and I really love playing the ney, which is a kind of a Sufi flute. If you've heard like Sufi dance music, whirling dervish music, sometimes you'll hear the ney, and it's often played by itself. It's extraordinary. And when he said that, it suddenly, I remembered something. He and I knew each other from like 17 years before. We lived 3 blocks from each other in Brooklyn, and I started talking to him on the L train in Brooklyn because I could see that he was carrying a ney, which I was super interested in. He loaned me a ney. We became pals. I started practicing, and then he left to move to a kibbutz in Israel. He's Israeli, and so he needed his ney back. So I hadn't seen him since, and suddenly I'm talking to him, and it was like his face came into focus. I'm like, oh my God. And when I said that, he looked at me and says, do you know me? I said, actually, I do. And we went on this whole thing where we remembered each other from years ago back in Brooklyn. It was just this unbelievable coincidence of these worlds meeting, and he lives right up the road. Again, he's probably about the same distance from me here as he was in Brooklyn, if you can imagine. I mean, just extraordinary, just brilliant little, just clear, picture perfect, clear messages or reflections from the universe saying, this is right for you. This is where you're supposed to be. We've gotten that over and over and over again, basically through trusting our intuition and our instinct, and trusting and watching the signs and really knowing what those signs mean, internalizing those signs. And now here we are.
And now he's, he has a wife and daughter who's a little older than Sophia, and they're here, like they've been here a year or something, and they're here like looking for a piece of land and a place to be in this community. And that's the other thing, like Risha had said about the organic sense of contribution, like it is like also a very organic community. Like you have the Costa Rican people who've lived here for many years, and people from the West who have like deliberately chosen to come here, and they're all offering and collaborating on things. It's really tremendous. Like this, I think their daughter, a number of the children who are around 5 years old, like basically the parents came together and created a school on the side of the river, and they just like try to create something different, like a different kind of school they want the kids to go to. And now it's like, got 8 5-year-olds in it, and some of them are Costa Rican and some of them are from these Western families, and they're just like going along. They're like, well, we're gonna have to create first grade next year because like we don't have
now
it now,
all 6.
like so. It's just like but like
great.
but it's just another example of like, when you're present, you kind of start to see that like what's unfolding before you is your own creation, and there's just a very clear sense of that here. It's kind of like everything, I could just feel it kind of like morphing together based on people's vision and intentions, and you can feel that anywhere you are in the world, but definitely for us right here, right now, it feels like the place where creation is unfolding, so it's pretty magnificent. What else to say?
There's so many other things we wanted to talk about, but I think what we really want to do is build a kind of not go too far into anything. That feels like enough to say on a first video, if you will. But so much is happening every day. So many new little interesting little moments that what I think we'd like to do is to have an ongoing kind of sharing about our experiences here and how our perceptions are changing, how things are shifting for us, what's coming as a result of being in this. Because I think there are a lot of people out there who kind of have this dream of like leaving that old world entirely behind and coming into a very fresh environment where they can just kind of see who they really are from a creative point of view. I get that we're all kind of one. We're here kind of as awareness, experiencing life. That's a very real thing. But I also think each of us has a certain blueprint or theme or excitement or way of channeling that oneness so that it might serve others, so that it might call others back to home, if you will. And I think many of us intuitively feel like we need to kind of leave all these old patterns, all these old ways of being and living behind, and kind of rest in a very still place, nourished by Mother Earth, nourished by Gaia, nourished by like this clean air, fertile soil, fresh water. As our friend Amy Schrift said on the Ownstream podcast we did with her, like these are our birthright. And we feel like we just want to soak into that and see what happens, really, just sort of see what wants to come from that. And we have all kinds of ideas. We're constantly coming up with new kind of cool things to share and relate, and all kinds of videos that I think we'd want to do. And I think like just doing those on a regular basis is what feels right to me right now.
Yeah, when we left here in March, we had an idea of something we were going to create through Ownstream, and it's funny how the past set of months have like worked themselves through us that we're really, and I think we've shared this recently, really working from a place of presence and now and authenticity in the now, instead of a lot of the things that would have come out of our mind that we thought like we should do with Ownstream, or this would be a good program, or this or that. We have a lot of ideas about what we might want to do, and we've like a lot, and we've like almost started down one road and almost started down another one. Yeah. But what feels most authentic now first was, just come here. It was kind of the next thing. It was like, come here was the very, very clear highest excitement, and now we're here. And now it's like organic expression is kind of our highest excitement. It's just to kind of like, okay, let's connect with this community. Let's just share what's coming up and not kind of try to jump ahead to create what the next service is, the next offering, whatever. Yeah. Like what feels the most exciting to us right now is to just share about where we are, and then see what grows from that in the time here.
Anne asked a really good question about the people who came here. Did they have a common vision, or did it really grow by everyone doing what he or she loves? It's really kind of both. I mean, um, a bunch of people who lived here and really started the expat portion of the community here were together in the Osa Peninsula, which is a very wild part of Costa Rica, close to the
The
corner.
wildest remaining
Panama.
part of the ocean.
It's
the
it's
coastal
largely
area.
undeveloped. It's jungle. The jungle goes right to the edge of the ocean. I mean, it's spectacular. And many of them lived there for a while, and they have some amazing stories to tell. But they really wanted to be able to be somewhere which was a place where they could grow their own food. They really wanted to know where their food was coming from. They wanted to have their hands in the dirt growing their own food. And so they got pulled up. A friend of theirs who we met last night, who moved here 21 years ago, when this didn't even closely resemble what it is now, they all kind of came up here and began to kind of find their way. And other people have come to it from that nucleus, if you will. But basically, like, everyone is sort of like even us being here for like a handful of days, we sort of wonder, like, okay, what will we offer? What will we share? What is our gift to this community? What could we bring? And that's not only just like a thing, like maybe we create something, like make something. It could be something else. I don't know. But I think there's a little blend of both. There was a very concerted effort at the beginning to stay together and to relocate to a same place where they could all kind of get their hands in the dirt and grow their own food. But at the same time, by virtue of that common intention, they've attracted others quite naturally who have, by virtue of their being called here, had something to offer very specific. Like, there's a guy, and this will be the last thing I think maybe I'd talk about, but there's a guy from New York City. He's an Italian guy. And when you talk to him, he looks like a Costa Rican expat. He's got the long hair, the beard. Like, he could have just walked out of like a yoga class, basically. But you start talking to him, it's like, oh, this guy's from Brooklyn. You know what I mean? He's
really
got that
big
voice.
accent.
And he thinks like a New Yorker. So we connected right away last night. We're talking, and he's Italian, and he just came here and started making pasta, like homemade pasta, and sold it to people. Like, he has pictures of he and his daughter when she was like 4 or 5 on a motorcycle in a big basket on the side of the bike, overflowing with pasta and bread that he had made. He was just driving it house to house through the community. He's not doing that anymore because he's building a retreat center basically on his property where his wife can hold her own events. She's a belly dancer and she does some really interesting things. So they can hold their own events and have yoga classes and do that sort of thing. But anyway, he sort of fell into this community and sort of felt like, this is something I can offer. I can give this to these people. And people still talk about it. They want his ravioli. They were talking about it last night.
Yeah, they've been talking about that a bunch. Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add to that in response to Anne's question was about the people that were in the Osa Peninsula on the coast. I also think that they very much like consciously all came here, started to follow one another here to create something else. And I don't know if that's like was consciously about kind of like leaving the hot coastal zones and coming somewhere else, but it was somewhere where they could be in a higher elevation where it's cooler and moderate temperature and enduring in terms of ability to grow food. But they definitely were like had an intuitive sense and a knowing that they wanted to be more in harmony with the land and grow their own food. But it's also like the people who were initially drawn to the Osa Peninsula are just a different breed of people, people who are looking for something really off the mainstream. There are a lot of places we've found in Costa Rica where there feels like a recreation of Western life.
Yeah.
Some of the popular places here in Costa Rica, especially on the coast because it's so beautiful and the beaches draw people here. Like there's a lot of feeling of like recreation of Western ways and restaurants and commercialism and like you could just feel it in the energy in those places. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons we talked about this on the podcast last year or earlier this year, how we felt really lost some when we first got to Costa Rica, kind of trying to figure out like, what are we doing here? Where's the place we want to kind of put roots? And as we wandered, closer and closer to Osa originally, like we started to encounter people, and this one very vibrant man who lives there who's thinking of moving here. We were just texting with him, who was calling it energetic refugees, like people who kind of like are looking for a higher energy and looking for so there's that common vision that they all shared, maybe not even consciously together until they ended up in the same place in the Osa and then started to build community there and then moved up here. So it's kind of amazing to see that energy, I think. It's like common energy and wavelength pulling people together in this location as well.
Jody asked a good question. Are you in the blue zone? The blue zone is west of here on the Nicoya Peninsula. This is more on the mainland. The Nicoya Peninsula, if you look at the map of Costa Rica, is kind of the northwest part of the land that juts out into the ocean. And there is a part there that's higher up that's quote unquote the blue zone. This is more east of there, more on the mainland. If you look at a map, basically you won't see this area on the map because it's so, it kind of doesn't exist on the map. They're tiny little hamlets that you have to zoom way in to find, if you're on a Google map, that is. But if you find Mount Chirripo, Chirripo, and just go to the west of that, that's where these communities are. That's where we are. And there are little towns called San Gerardo de Rivas, Canan de Rivas.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles de Rivas, a little different. That was the original title of this video was A Tale of Two Cities, because we left from LAX and we came into Los Angeles de Rivas, two very, very different places. I think we've expressed those differences though in the context of this video. We don't need to go into that anymore. Yeah, I'm just scanning the questions. It's so great. People are joining and interested in this. I can't believe we've been talking for a half an hour.
Yeah.
But it's great. Yeah, Jody, we're up in the mountains in the mainland at the base of Mount Chirripo. And we're here for 4 months. We're here through the end of November. Again,
At least.
At least, yeah. It's open after that, and the house is available. This house it's like a dream. We've been living in all sorts of different places in the last year. It's been a year and a day since we left our place in Encinitas and traveled in the van, and now we're here, and it feels really good to just be in one location. Because moving around, it definitely kind of pulls you out of various creative movements that might be naturally forming. There is something to be said for staying still in the outer way so that something can more deeply emerge in an inner way that might want to express itself outwardly or not. But that's sort of how we feel. So yeah, this house is open after November, and who knows, maybe we'll stay. It's hard to imagine leaving at this point, but we'll see how things move. There's a certain way this all flows, and we're open. Boy, it's been great to see some really amazing friends joining us on this call. Bridget and Anne and Risha and a friend of mine from high school, Melissa, who's also very familiar with small town mountain living. Something to be said for that. Teresa Yanaros, one of our recent podcast guests. Jody, thank you for being with us and connecting with us. Carol Mohan, great to see you. And Benita, of course. Jody, all right, we're not house sitting.
No, you can do that fairly easily here in the rainy season, I would say, if this interests you.
Actually, yeah.
We wanted to live in this specific house, which we're renting, but there are quite a few opportunities to house sit here, and I think especially during the rainy season, you can get very good deals here, because most people leave here.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. Most people leave here in October, November, especially some in September too, so it's actually a really easy time of year to get house sit or a cheap rental, and even a cheap lasting rental. If you started in this season, you can get it for a lot less.
Yeah. Well, more to come. We will be sharing more. I hesitate to say we'll be doing this every day.
Yep.
It doesn't feel like, I don't know how this is going to go. We'll give heads up, and they'll appear in our timeline after we're done. So if you want to stay tuned, please either join us on a live video coming soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, who knows. But there will be a regular sharing from this end to you, and however form that appears will be just perfect. So
thanks for joining. No, this is great. It feels great to connect.
Really, really beautiful being with everyone. Thank you for being with us, and more to come.
Bye.
Bye.